Hello and welcome to this edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Brittany Ramsey. Residents of Beardmore and the surrounding First Nations rallied Wednesday afternoon to protest a plan to close the EMS base in that community. Demonstrators say the move will put lives at risk and drive away potential residents, and they're also concerned at the lack of consultation prior to the decision by Thunder Bay City Council. Adam Riley reports.
To have an ambulance come from Geraldton or Nipigon, that's over a 2.5-hour round trip to get to hospital. That is not acceptable.
Those are the concerns held by residents of Beardmore and the surrounding First Nations should the 10-year strategic plan for Superior North EMS be implemented by Thunder Bay City Council. Close to 50 people, all socially distanced, rallied in support of the ambulance base that would be shuttered as a result of the plan. Beardmore Ward Councillor Claudette Trottier says the closure would not only have a devastating impact on seniors, it would also spell certain doom for her ward.
They have at least some security of getting to hospital in time if they need it. If we lose our ambulance services here, good luck ever attracting anybody to the community. It's a vital service and we can't do without it. It's people's lives.
The closure would also have serious implications for several First Nations in the area, including Rocky Bay, Bingwi Niashi Anishinaabe, and Inibigu Zagagan Anishinaabe. Newly elected BNA Chief Paul Gladu says having an ambulance within 20 minutes of his community is critical for community members.
It's needed. This ambulance is very important to people that's living in the surrounding communities. I mean, we have one band member she's sitting right here. It's over since 2017. She's used it 200 times, she said.
Last summer, nearby AZA First Nation began planting roots for a new community near Jellicoe with the installation of a power line to help service 20 new homes. AZA Chief Teresa Nelson says the decision to close Beardmore is confusing considering all the development and concerning due to the lack of consultation in the Robinson Superior region.
It's outrageous. It's just unheard of nowadays. And for them to do something like that over a budget call, I mean, there's so many other options that they could have done. They could have came to us and said, you know what, the budget is tight due to whatever. They could have made up any excuse. It's unbelievable. It just almost brings us back into the treaty days almost, where they didn't even consider talking to us.
Thunder Bay City Council will vote on the implementation of the 10-year strategic plan for EMS in April. Adam Riley, TBT News.
The Northwestern Health Unit announced 3 more cases of COVID-19 Friday, following 12 new cases from Thursday, and it's also announcing rollout plans for the next phase of vaccinations. Friday's 3 cases are all in separate parts of the region, one in each the Sioux Lookout, Kenora, and Dryden Red Lake areas. As of Friday, there were 44 active cases in the NWHU's catchment area. Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kit Young-Hoon, says she's excited that over the next few weeks, they'll be offering second doses to their first priority group, and those in the next highest risk level will be eligible for a dose in the coming weeks as well.
This week and next week, Northwestern Health Units and other local partners are offering the COVID-19 vaccine to second doses to elder care home and long-term care home residents, and first doses to long-term care home staff and essential caregivers, other high-risk individuals, and those listed as highest priority healthcare workers in the province's prioritization framework.
In early April, residents over 80 years of age will be able to get their first dose of the vaccine. Young-Hoon says the health unit will spend the next week finalizing mass vaccination location across its catchment area. Meanwhile, the Thunder Bay District Health Unit is taking steps to toughen enforcement of self-isolation orders for those diagnosed with COVID-19. This week, Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Janet DeMille, issued a class order under Section 22 of Ontario's Health Protection and Promotion Act. The health unit said the class order strengthens its opportunity to quickly enforce self-isolation at a time of high case numbers in the area. The order applies to all people who are required to self-isolate. That includes individuals who are a confirmed or probable case of COVID-19, have been tested and are awaiting results, have symptoms and haven't been tested, or are a close contact of a confirmed or probable case. When there is noncompliance, the legislation permits for a maximum daily fine of $5,000. In a statement, DeMille says while most individuals are compliant with orders to isolate, unfortunately, there are some people who aren't following public health directions. A similar Section 22 order was issued by the Northwestern Health Unit 2 weeks ago. As COVID-19 case counts hit record highs in Thunder Bay recently, it was no surprise the district was moved to the gray lockdown zone, but it took many other regional communities by surprise. The township of Marathon is now urging both the Premier and the health unit to reconsider putting some areas of the district back into the red. Adam Riley explains.
The region did not shut down because Marathon had a huge per capita outbreak. Now Thunder Bay has the outbreak, and my thoughts and prayers are with them, but they didn't shut down when we had ours, and we showed that we can handle an outbreak.
Marathon's mayor and council are frustrated following the decision late last month to move the entire Thunder Bay district into the gray lockdown framework, despite the fact that a majority of the cases of COVID-19 in the district are isolated to the city of Thunder Bay. On Monday, at a special council meeting, council passed a resolution to seek clarity on the timeline for the gray designation.
We don't want to say we want to be open right now for business. We'd like to, but in reality, we said, give it a couple weeks, but we need a finite date saying as of March 15th, we need to go back into the red.
Dumas feels as his community is 300 kilometers away from the lakehead and there are no essential reasons for Thunder Bay residents to make the trek to Marathon, that his community and others similarly distanced should be partitioned off from the designation. He is particularly concerned over the impacts the designation will have on small businesses. Stopping the business communities in Marathon for operating and potentially put them into a situation of maybe closure and permanent closure is not the right answer when we know as a council and we know throughout the district that COVID-19 cases are not being driven by barber shops and small little mom and pop shops, and reducing the size of people going into stores is not necessarily the answer in all cases. As of Friday, Dumas says there has been no response from the Thunder Bay District Health Unit or from the Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Janet DeMille, on the resolution. Adam Riley, TBT News.
COVID vaccinations began Wednesday on some of Thunder Bay's most vulnerable residents. People aged 85 and older were eligible to receive a dose at the CLE Coliseum. And over at the CLE Heritage Building, Mattawa officials began vaccinating members of their 9 First Nations who live here in the city. Corey Nordstrom has more.
It's the busiest the CLE grounds have been in well over a year as vaccination clinics opened at 2 buildings on the property. Staff from the district health unit were at the Coliseum vaccinating some of the city's oldest residents, with those over 85 eligible in the first round.
I lost somebody dear to me in the last week. And it was just awful. And it was not just one person, it was 2 people that died with it. And they were one was my brother and his son-in-law.
She's going to be 94 years old next week. And we thought that it was imperative, just in case, just to give her that added protection. She's at the age right now where she's very susceptible.
Meanwhile, the Mattawa Health Cooperative has started vaccinations at the Heritage Building for people from their 9 member communities. For the first day, 170 shots are being administered, with a priority given to more at-risk members.
Mostly elders that are coming in, the vulnerable people, those that have chronic diseases are being vaccinated on this first round.
It's been a long wait for these vulnerable groups to get their COVID-19 immunization, but for those over the age of 85, it's actually coming earlier than expected. The province was targeting March 15th as the date where adults over the age of 80 could be given their first doses of the vaccine.
I didn't think I'd come this early. I thought I'd come later on, but I was happy to come at this time and have it all done.
I was shocked when I opened up my Facebook and saw that it was ready almost 2 weeks earlier. I was so excited, so I booked the appointment right away.
Vaccinations at the health unit site are fully booked for the rest of the week, and they hope that on Friday they can begin taking bookings for next week. Mattawa Health Cooperative will have 1 more clinic this week and 2 next week.
We have 4,000 members living here in Thunder Bay, so it's going to take some time, over the next few months for us to complete all the vaccinations.
Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
There was lots of good news this week on the push to vaccinate rural communities in the region. On Tuesday, residents of Peninsula Manor, a supportive seniors housing complex in Marathon, began receiving doses of the Pfizer vaccine. North of Superior Healthcare Group CEO Adam Brown says the manufacturer has updated the transportation safety of that vaccine, which is allowing it to be administered further into the region. Last month, residents at Wilkes Terrace and Terrace Bay received doses of Moderna, and now as Health Canada has approved multiple vaccines, Brown says it's going to be much easier to vaccinate all residents.
Storage is going to be an issue, so if we wanted to do a mass vaccination clinic here in Marathon or Terrace Bay, for example, we don't have that storage capacity, that -70 freezer locally. So doing a mass vaccination clinic that may take several days with Pfizer would not be possible. But with Moderna, it certainly is, and with AstraZeneca, that's even more stability with that product. So absolutely, it's opening up possibilities.
Canada approved a fourth COVID-19 vaccine on Friday, and Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu says it's a big boost in vaccination procurement. Meanwhile, the Thunder Bay Superior North MP also says she's been lobbying for a steady supply of vaccines for this region. Corey Nordstrom has more.
The approval of the versatile Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine in Canada is great news, according to the country's health minister, Patty Hajdu.
This is even more flexible because it's a one-shot vaccine. Now, we don't expect to receive delivery of J&J until next quarter, but getting the approval out of the way is a very positive step.
The country now has 4 approved brands of COVID-19 vaccine, and Hajdu is excited for how the newest ones will be able to change the way doses are administered.
In terms of AstraZeneca, it gives that flexibility for really rapid movement of a vaccine that's more stable, doesn't require the same level of care and refrigeration. It means that new partners, or I suppose old partners, can be drawn into delivery. Things like you can see doctors' offices and pharmacies and other kinds of immunizers that have always been part of immunization but haven't been able to fully participate with the previous 2.
And the Thunder Bay Superior North MP says that with more vaccines soon available nationwide, the request for more doses here in the Thunder Bay area are being brought to her provincial counterpart in the Ministry of Health.
I speak to Minister Elliott all the time about Thunder Bay and the situation of Thunder Bay. Most recently, I just talked to her, I would say late last week, just getting her sense of what kinds of supports can be in place for Thunder Bay, talking about the concerns around hospitalization.
Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
When we come back, council in Schreiber begins to move forward following the death of Mayor Dave Hamilton. Almost 3 weeks after the tragic accident that claimed the life of Schreiber's mayor, Town Council have selected someone to take over the role and represent the community for the remainder of the term. Adam Riley has more.
Please observe a moment of silence in memory of Dave Hamilton.
It was an emotional evening Tuesday in Scriber Council chambers, as it was the first meeting since the tragic death of Mayor Dave Hamilton, who was killed in a highway collision on February 13th. With Hamilton's death, Council now had to declare the office of mayor vacant and appoint a successor. Nominated by Dan McGrath and supported by the rest of Council, Deputy Mayor Kevin Mullins has officially become the Mayor of Scriber, a task Mullins says he is ready to tackle.
I think I'm going to enjoy and relish in it, but I'm going to have to lean on a lot of people. And as you heard in the council meeting, I have a lot of people supporting me. So, and not just from this town, from all over the North Shore. So, with that, I'm pretty happy. To tell you the truth, we only got to be 50% successful, because if we do 50% of what Dave did, we'll be successful.
As a result of Mullins' appointment to mayor, his seat as councillor is now vacant. Council has put in motion an application process to fill that vacancy. Mullins is hoping many in the community will express interest.
People should sit on. Now is a good time. It's off the top of my head, a year and 10 months left, and see if you like council. And if you're interested, you put your letter in and tell us what you're interested in and what you'll bring to the table, and then us as council will make a decision.
Council will be accepting letters of interest until March 17th. Mullins is hopeful they will be able to make a final selection and appoint the new member by April. Adam Riley, TBT News.
2 youth detention facilities in Thunder Bay and one in Kenora are among 26 throughout the province that will permanently close at the end of April. The J.J. Kelso Center near the regional hospital is a closed custody facility for girls aged 12 to 17. And the Jack McGuire Center near Roslyn Road is an open custody facility for boys in the same age group. The two centers have been operating at less than 1/3 capacity over the last few years, and the Ford government says they're being closed in order to address underutilization and spend that money more effectively. Around 7 local youth in custody were immediately transferred to detention centers in Sault Ste. Marie. The facilities are run by Creighton Youth Services, and board president Ben Stride Darnley says they were shocked and disappointed with how abruptly the situation was handled.
There was no involvement from us, no chance to negotiate, no chance to collaborate, and no chance to ensure that resources are maintained locally. We're also quite frustrated at the disrespect it shows to the youth, given the speed at which they were taken from our facilities to other facilities.
NAN Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler shares the same frustration. NAN and Treaty 3 have sent a joint letter to Premier Doug Ford.
Just expressing our horror and just our outrage that this is being done to our children, and the fact that they were given such a short notice that they didn't have time to say their goodbyes, and then the fact that they were shackled like criminals into a plane and then flown south is just horrific. I don't know how any government can treat children like that.
Closures will also result in about 50 layoffs for Creighton Youth Service staff and management in Thunder Bay and Kenora. Ontario has chosen a contractor to complete a pair of expansion projects at the Thunder Bay Correctional Centre and the Kenora Jail. The projects were first announced last fall, but there's still no indication as to how much the work will cost. There's also no word on when the new Thunder Bay Correctional Complex is coming. Ryan Benazzo has more.
We now know who will build the expansions at the Thunder Bay Correctional Centre and Kenora Jail.
Our government has selected Bird Construction as the successful bidder to design and build these expansion projects.
They'll apparently be ready to break ground next month, but there's still no indication as to how much the additions will cost, and design documents aren't finished either. What is known is that the 1,500 to 2,000 square meter expansions will add some new cells at each facility and allow inmates to access new programming, particularly Indigenous cultural programming.
Inside in many of those cells, they are inhumane.
Anishinaabe Nation Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler says inmates, the vast majority of whom are Indigenous, need more services.
To speak with an elder have access to ceremony, to have access to like green grass, like actual ground where they can do these ceremonies.
Construction is slated to finish in spring of 2022.
I think it's a very ambitious timeline for sure. Um, little concerning that it's been 4 years. We've been waiting for a new facility and we haven't seen a shovel in the ground, but this could happen so quick.
In fact, a new Thunder Bay Correctional Complex has been discussed for 2 decades. The Ford government reaffirmed the province's commitment to build it back in 2019. Since then, there's been little progress.
We have not put out the request for proposal yet. We are working with Infrastructure Ontario on that piece. And as the bids are prepared and reviewed, then we will have a much better timeline in terms of when we can expect the build and ultimately to be able to open it.
We needed this in 2002, and now it's 2022 before we get this interim building. So is it going to be 2030? Like, where are we going to end up? When are we going to finally see some real tangible progress?
Bradshaw hopes the expansion isn't used as an excuse to push back the new facility. Ryan Bonazzo, TBT News.
Coming up after the break, COVID-19 continues to affect the local sports scene. The Superior International Junior Hockey League announced its decision to cancel the remainder of the 2020-2021 season this week. The league paused play in mid-January, but with the rise of COVID-19 cases, resuming the season was unfortunately out of the question. Catalina Gillies has more.
Another sports season has been canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The SIJHL only played a handful of games before the season was halted, with 3 teams not having touched the ice at all. Commissioner Darren Nicholas reflected on why he ultimately decided to cancel the season.
We just kept looking for ways to get back, and time became the enemy, and certainly the public health factors, of course, just too many obstacles, and ultimately we thought the payoff was going to be too small at the end. So we're really, our options were waning down to just getting our teams back together and playing as many times as we could against the same opponent, which wasn't really attractive.
This marks the second straight season that the Bill Salonen Cup will not be handed out. The Thunder Bay North Stars will remain as the defending champions after winning it over the Red Lake Miners in 2019. The current players born in the year 2000 are even more disappointed. This was their final year in junior hockey before moving on to the college level. Not only has their graduation year from the league been called off, they also missed last year's playoffs when the pandemic was in its early stages.
You know, those are really the kids that, you know, that the effort was behind trying to give them some type of a semblance of activity this year. So, you know, there's no easy way to say it. It's a terrible feeling for those guys.
The SIJHL will now shift its focus in preparing for the 2021-2022 season, marking the league's 20th anniversary. And Nicholas hopes that by next spring, the Bill Salonen Cup will be lifted once again. Catalina Gillies, TBT News.
The Ministry of Natural Resources and the Dryden Police Service are asking for public assistance following an incident involving a pregnant deer which was shot within city limits. It's determined the animal was shot with a carbon arrow with a brass spike glued to the tip. It was then dragged to a wooded area and left to spoil sometime between February 18th and 23rd. Anyone with information is asked to contact the ministry, DPS, or Crime Stoppers. A massive boulder slid onto the Highway 17 bypass near Kenora shortly before noon Thursday during scheduled rock removal in the area. Thankfully, no injuries occurred after this 400 cubic meter mass slid onto the roadway. The Ministry of Transportation confirmed the highway had already been closed for planned blasting and remained that way until around 6 p.m. Thursday evening when a single lane was able to reopen to traffic. The MTO says the size of the rock well exceeded the capabilities of removal equipment, so the rock had to be blasted until it was a manageable size. OPP helped direct traffic through Kenora while the removal work was completed. That's all for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.